So it is official, at UFC 292, Henry Cejudo will be taking on Marlon Chito Vera. Both men are coming off of losses recently, and Henry Cejudo just fell short in his title quest against Aljamain Sterling, and Chito Vera is coming off a fairly one-sided decision loss to Corey Sandhagen. Now these guys are looking to bounce back, and both of them are still very much on the path to challenging for that bantamweight strap. Now in my opinion, Chito Vera is very much up against it here, and it's going to be a very tough fight for him in August. Now if you guys do want to up your athleticism and prevent some injuries in your training, feel free to check out my free ebook Combat Training Essentials. The link is in the description. Now as we know, Henry Cejudo had a big layoff and came back in a title quest against Aljamain Sterling, and he did end up falling short. You know, I thought Henry Cejudo was definitely going to get the victory here. I thought his wrestling was going to be too much for Aljamain Sterling, but Aljamain Sterling did prove me wrong as a champion. Just for me, there was a lot of unknown questions surrounding Aljamain Sterling and his controversial victories leading up to this bout with Henry Cejudo, but he showed the world and he proved to everyone that he's here to stay as the bantamweight champion, that he's not going to be dethroned easily. Now, Henry Cejudo, I think, is a fantastic fighter, and he's still very much on that cusp of becoming a bantamweight champion. He just fell short in this one. It was a very close fight, and a fight that could have gone either way, but I definitely understand the judge's decision, and ultimately I think the right person ended up winning that fight. To be the champion, you do have to beat the champion, right? And Henry Cejudo didn't put a stamp on it, didn't really beat Aljamain Sterling. So in my opinion, even if some people said, you know what, he maybe won on those judges' scorecards, it wasn't a definitive enough victory for me, or a clear-cut victory for Henry. Not enough to take away the title from the current champion, Aljamain Sterling. And rewinding a little bit to after the fight against Aljamain Sterling for Henry Cejudo, he was a bit unsure of if he was going to continue his career, because as we know, his ultimate goal was to beat Aljamain Sterling and then go up to featherweight and beat Alexander Volkanovski, and that would have made him the first ever 3-division champion within the UFC. The first man to win 3 different titles in 3 different weight classes within the UFC. Now, those plans have been derailed for him a little bit. I'm not saying that it's completely out of the question for him, but when you consider Henry Cejudo's size, it's going to be very difficult for him to go up to featherweight and challenge Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski is a very small man, but Henry Cejudo is very well undersized within that contest as well. Nonetheless, he seems to readjusted and realigned his priorities and goals, and he does look set to be coming back within the bantamweight division and making another run at this bantamweight title against Aljamain Sterling. Now, for him to do that, he has to go through Chito Vera first. Now, Chito Vera is an absolutely fantastic fighter, as we all know, but within his last fight and within his fights previously before this, we have known that he's quite a slow starter, and he ended up paying for that quite a bit in his bout against Corey Sandhagen. Really didn't do much within the first few rounds. He gradually increased the pace as the fight went on, but it was nowhere near enough to secure a victory, and Corey Sandhagen really dominated that fight for the most part. The problem for Chito Vera in this fight against Henry Cejudo is not only is he going to be outmatched in the wrestling department, Henry Cejudo has a pretty consistent pace throughout the fight. He keeps up a pretty consistent pressure, and Chito Vera can be too slow to start. You know, he can't be going into this fight and keeping up the same sort of pattern that he has been in his previous few performances. Chito Vera is facing a level of competition now that is right up at the top of the heap of the UFC bantamweight division, and he's no longer going to be getting away with these slow starts. I think ultimately that's what's going to cost him here, as well as I just think Henry Cejudo is a much more skilled mixed martial artist than Chito Vera. Now, I know Henry is much older, and he did show a little bit of a decline in his performance against Aljamain Sterling. Guys, you cannot beat Father Time. Even though he is at a high level, make no illusions about it. He isn't the Henry Cejudo that we remember. He isn't as fast as what he once was. I'm sure it takes him a lot longer in his camps and a lot more conditioning and outside work just to get ready for a mixed martial arts bout. So that's one of the main things that changes with your age. You need a lot more work outside of the cage or outside of your training to be able to stay at the level of these younger guys. So factoring all this into consideration, I don't know how much longer Henry Cejudo can compete at this level. We did see with Jorge Masvidal that he recognized within his last fight that it was time to hang it up. Even though he was competing at a high level, he couldn't really compete at that level anymore. Now, Chito Vera, in my opinion, really needs to bounce back in this fight. So ultimately, I think within this contest, Henry Cejudo is going to get the job done. I just don't think Chito Vera has the capabilities to beat someone on the level of Henry. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. How do you think this contest is going to go? Because I definitely think Chito Vera has a chance to win the contest because he's a very crisp striker and he has a lot of power behind his punches. But considering his patterns have taken quite a bit longer to get into a rhythm and put damage on his opponents, I think Henry Cejudo is the type of fighter that's going to take full advantage of this within the contest, and he is quite outmatched in the wrestling department as well. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and if you do like this sort of content, Feel free to hit subscribe if you're interested in the latest MMA news. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll catch you all later.